America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker, the president of the Job Creators Network Foundation, and today we're joined by Greg Workmon. Greg is the founder and CEO of LoadUp, which is a junk removal company serving all 50 states. What makes it different is that LoadUp is a tech-enabled junk removal platform that pairs customers with local loaders using real-time logistics, transparent pricing, and AI tools. Greg, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. Appreciate you having me on.
Well, I love this concept. I think it's so interesting. For me, since I'm not a big techie, I think the best analogy is kind of like an Uber platform, but for customers and loaders. But tell us about LoadUp and how it helps people and where the idea came from.
Yeah, absolutely. So LoadUp was founded 11 years ago. I was working full-time at another company where I got the idea. And I was really looking to make side cash at the time. And I found a niche in picking up old mattresses, specifically in the Atlanta area. The job I was working at the time, that was a common thing that we were requested to handle, was mattress removal. And really just saw a better way to facilitate the transaction. The incumbents in this industry are largely franchise players. And they were built off a model in the 80s that lacked a lot of transparency, still does to this day, especially around pricing of getting rid of items. So really saw an opportunity to basically turn the industry into an e-com model that was digital first. And that was the first idea that really sparked what eventually became LoadUp. We pre-priced jobs for mattresses back in the early days because we felt like this was just an easier, better way to handle getting rid of items. And long story short, we've grown that into a full-blown junk removal service that's all facilitated on a proprietary software platform that we've built. And it does exactly what you highlighted. We're basically the Uber of junk removal. We take out all the guesswork for the customer. We pre-price things in real time online, so customers know exactly what they're going to pay for their job. And then we facilitate that on the back end with a network of providers across the country that are looking for work that maybe don't know how to market themselves super well. And we do. So, that's really where the strong tie-in for our network is. We have the customer base because we've facilitated a really easy transaction, and they're ready to provide the work.
So talk to me about the transparency issue. I read about that in preparing for the interview. What is the lack of transparency in the industry?
Yeah, so it's really around pricing. The way the model works is to get customers to fill out a form online or call to schedule an appointment so that somebody can come out to your house, look at what you have, and then provide a price to you. That's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is not tell you what the price is, load it onto the truck, and then the volume that your stuff takes up on the truck now dictates the price. So you don't necessarily know until you've invested all of this time. And once you've invested that time, it's really hard to say no to whatever price has been thrown out.
It's not even the time, it's on the truck. So how do you, I see how that would be problematic.
Right. Mhm.
So what are some of the biggest challenges? I mean, were you a tech person when you decided to do this? How'd you build a platform? Is your background in technology?
No, actually, it's not. Logistics and the waste industry. So prior to becoming in the waste industry, I worked for my dad's company. He was in last mile delivery. Did a lot of delivery for mattresses and large furniture and doing in-home setup. So I got exposed to that really early in my career. So I had a knack for it, just being in and around that. And I grew up in that environment, just hearing all the lingo of the industry as I was growing up, and then transitioned into the waste space for more traditional, commercial waste and residential pickup. Uh, and that's really where the idea was bred from. The technology piece that came later, um, you know, I knew technology would be a core part of the business as we grew it, and was very fortunate to find some really solid technical folks in the early days to help build the proprietary platform.
It's interesting. Just when you think that an industry can't be disrupted, you meet somebody like you who has brought in the tech side and disrupted an industry in such a big way. What do you think is sort of one of the big mistakes you may have made in the early days that helped shape how you're doing it today?
One of the big mistakes that we made, yeah, probably a lot. I don't know how much time we have to talk about all those mistakes, but the the biggest thing is trying to do too much. From a technology perspective,
Mhm.
especially if it's outside of what's your bread and butter that you're really trying to accomplish. You can try to do all these things and be all things to all people and facilitate that through the technology. That was probably the biggest mistake that was reoccurring in the early days. Just trying to do too many things that were on the periphery that weren't really bread and butter initiatives in the technology. Um, when really we should have just been focused on, what are the core things that our tool needs to do to execute this job and be the best in the world at facilitating this transaction. That was the biggest mistake that was just reoccurring. And technology isn't a solve for everything either. That's another key point. There were a number of things where we tried to make technology the solve, but it was really human centric that we needed to solve for first before the technology did.
So that's where you sort of think, okay, here's where AI can be super beneficial in disrupting this industry and a new take on it. But there's always that point where human judgment is still essential and still needed. How many people do you have in the company now? And where do you sort of expect the growth to come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're right at 70 full-time W-2 employees right now, all stateside. And then we have about 20 full-time nearshore folks in the Philippines that work for us. And then, we're managing in any given month about 1,500 independent contractors that are active on the platform. And that fluctuates depending on the season that we're in.
Right. Wow. Okay. So you've seen a lot of growth then. 70,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 70 people, W-2 is, I consider that a good sized small business. Where do you see, what's sort of your vision for LoadUp in the next 5 years and how AI and your operations, where do you see AI and operations continuing to intersect or when they'll intersect next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing we found with AI is it's a very iterative process. It's not a one and done quick solve that's going to replace humans. What we found is, you have to start with simple concepts and let the AI help humans. That's been our biggest learning. Now that could progress really fast. We've seen AI, just in a really short period of time, come a long way. And how we're incorporating that into the business and where it ties in with the future of where we're going. We're working on a pretty big initiative right now where we want to streamline how fast we can get an instant price for more complex jobs where a human is actually involved today. A good example of this would be, your grandma has a house and maybe she was a hoarder and you've got a lot of things just in this house. Yeah, it's really hard to pre-price using like a catalog, which is our sort of traditional method. Take you hours to try to build a quote. With AI and image recognition and how far that's come, we're working on a new tool for customer booking where you can just snap photos in real time. It can diagnose the items that are being removed, and we can generate a price. Where it used to take maybe a couple hours for a human to facilitate that price, now it can be done in 30 seconds or less.
That's fantastic. And I've seen that kind of technology in actually home insurance. Home insurance is a huge issue in Florida. And so because of the hurricanes and everything. And so what I have had with my house is like just a spontaneous inspection from my insurance company. Believe it or not, you never hear from them unless you have a claim or, something like that. Never had a claim with them. And all of a sudden it was like, hey, we'd like to do an inspection. Here's an app. I need you to follow, each room, take pictures from this angle, and submit them. And then it was like a pass or fail kind of thing. So there was no human coming out and taking a look. It was all me as the camera, and they had me following instructions through an app. So it was really interesting, but I can see how the app would help, the AI would help in terms of taking pictures of, a room full of junk, basically, and figuring out how to price each side, or even does it sort of estimate what the weight would be? Because you really price based on weight and space, right?
Yeah, so it translates it into weight and dimensions, which then get translated into cubic yards. The industry generally operates off of cubic yards because that's how truck capacity is dictated. And then when it gets to a disposal site, they also measure things in cubic yards. So that's what the tooling can do really, really fast and efficiently.
What's your sort of your feedback from the contractors who utilize this as the loaders around the country? Do they like it? Do they feel like it's beneficial to their businesses locally? I've gotten into cars with Uber drivers before, and they've kind of said to me, "Hey, I could drive you," and they'll try to undercut the price Uber was going to charge if we go off the clock, because they want the whole thing. They don't want to share it with Uber. What kind of feedback do you get from some of your contractors? Because 1,500 is a much smaller number to deal with than what Uber deals with. So I assume there's some level of relationship around the country with these subcontractors.
For sure. Yeah, there's always going to be bad apples. And these guys are entrepreneurs as well. At the end of the day, customers transact with us because of ease of use. That's who our core market is, folks that want ease of use. And they keep coming back to us because of that, rather than taking Joe Hauler's card and calling them separately. But, the independent contractors that do really well on our platform, they understand that relationship of most of these customers. They want ease of use. And my job is to facilitate, picking this up and making it a smooth transaction. And we do have some pushback from the market where they do want to try to cut us out. But it is also very difficult with just the way that we have our system set up.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm also intrigued. You said you have 70 employees. What type of talent and skill set are you hiring internally? Because you're not doing the loading. So what are you hiring for?
Well, so what we do really, really well here internally is we market extremely well. So we basically operate like a digital agency, but we're the only client. And then customer service and sales. A lot of the jobs that come in from our website, they can't be pre-priced by our catalog because they may just be too large, which is why we have our AI tool. And then there's just some customers, they just want to talk to somebody from a comfort level. So we have a lot of folks internally here where their job is to really just make sure that we are facilitating a good transaction. And there's a lot of quality assurance that comes along with running a platform like ours. So that's what a lot of the folks are doing. And then engineering and product development, that's also a main driver of our headcount. We are always enhancing what our platform capabilities can do. And then once we enhance it, we have to maintain it. So that's primarily the folks that are full-time here.
Okay. And I know that you've got so our founder was Bernie Marcus, and what he loved to talk about. He passed last November, but what he loved to talk about is how many small businesses were created as a result of Home Depot, because now they were able to buy, basically direct in bulk as small contractors. And so suddenly you had all these small contractors doing business and buying from the Home Depot. So in many ways, you are that base of supply of customer, not necessarily building supplies like he did, but supply of customers. So you're essentially helping to create more small businesses. What are you finding? Are you finding it's leading to more and more entrepreneurship because it's an ease of entry? I mean, really, there's not a lot of barriers to suddenly becoming an entrepreneur and utilizing your site.
Yeah, no, it's junk removal is a very competitive landscape. It is a low barrier of entry market in general. The biggest barrier is customer acquisition. So our job is to be the best at customer acquisition and then facilitating on the back end. And yeah, absolutely feeding into entrepreneurship. We are definitely making it easier for people who maybe don't have the creative marketing bone in their body, but they're really hardworking. They want to do a good job for the customer. So I think we cater to a specific type of entrepreneur that's really more operation minded, not necessarily who you'd see as like a visionary type entrepreneur. So yeah, I mean, it's a similar-ish comparison there with Home Depot. But yeah, and we really want to lean into that into the future here, where we see our platform really evolving into being the infrastructure for the whole industry and how the industry operates into a new level of transparency in this space, where that's actually, that's industry standard now. It's not the old way of doing business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love looking at those connections on where you can see you become, like I said, you create a supply of customers, which is the hardest part, is the customer acquisition. And so it makes the ease of entry into starting a business even easier. I just wonder, what are your challenges in terms of quality control on the subcontractors and the loaders that you use around the country? Are there big challenges there, or has it been working out pretty well?
Yeah, it's geographic. There are very interesting labor markets when you talk about the Northeast and then out west, particularly. That's where generally the biggest challenges present themselves, but it really becomes mitigated by having a higher volume of loaders on the network. That helps quality control because if there are issues, we do have a pretty expansive bench that we can dip into. So that's that's sort of how we combat it. And then we also have an internal rating system that keeps real-time logging of how their performance is in the market. So if it falls below a certain score, we have a conversation with that loader. If we have to have a second conversation, it's typically removal from the platform. So that in and of itself creates some really good quality control because they don't want to lose the revenue that's coming in from our platform.
I mean, I think so. Even when you go back to comparing it to Uber, what a lot of passengers, I think, don't realize is they get scored too. So if they get in the car and they're a terrible, rider, essentially, passenger, they're going to get scored and they may have trouble getting rides, right? So I think it's a great checks and balances on both sides to kind of look at the quality control and maintain the best quality for your customer, but also make sure you're not, sometimes people are just not that great. Even when you want them to be your customer, I've run into some people who are just not that great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And what's interesting though about our business is it's a very infrequent service that we provide. Whereas like a Uber, it's pretty high frequency. A lot of people, especially younger folks, they're taking 3-4 rides a week. Whereas this is more, maybe they do junk removal 2 times in a 5-year span. So, we don't have to worry much about customer quality so much as we have to worry about the loader side of the house.
Yeah. Is there an app for the service, or is it something you go online for? How do people find you?
Yeah, the primary mode for folks to order on is actually just the web. Because it's an infrequent service that people need, they're just more, just the entry of how they come in and find out about us. It's usually a web search, so then they end up booking on the web versus downloading an app. But we do have an app that's available that's relatively new for the customer. And we're seeing uptick in that, but it's more repeat customers who have already used us that are using the app. And then the loader side of the house, we've had an app for them to manage jobs out in the field. We've had that for probably 7 or 8 years now, which is instrumental in us actually providing the service.
Okay. And where do they go? Where do customers go to find your business and use your services? What's the website?
Yeah. So our website is goloadup.com. And most people find us through a Google search, or what's really popular or becoming really popular is AI search through OpenAI and all the other tools out there that are AI search centric. So our goal is to be dominant in the digital landscape. That's our customer acquisition strategy primarily. We have some other modes of marketing, but that's our primary one.
Okay. GoLoadUp.com. Well, Greg, thank you so much for taking the time to join us on Main Street Matters, America's Small Business Megaphone. Thank you all for taking the time to tune in. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show at salempodcastnetwork.com or wherever you get your podcast from, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.